All right, good morning, guys. Melissa here. Literally just woke up. Got some extra sleep, not working today. So, I love having days of sleeping in. They're very few, and time to just enjoy my time. Just to, if I literally had money, I was thinking of this last night. If I literally had money, I would spend more time on self care, more time in the gym, more time with family, more time with helping other people. But I do work. Work is something I do. So, anyways, I wanted to talk about something with abortion. So, whoops, drop that phone. Um, so I walked into a conversation where, um, there, okay. I walked into a conversation where abortion was being talked about. Am I going to be quiet about that? No. No, I had a choice to say something or to be quiet. And I thought, Melissa, you need to say something. So, we were talking about abortion. And somebody had said, if it doesn't affect me, I really don't care. You know, if it's not my business, I really don't care what people do. You know, it's their decision, it's their choice, it's up to them. And I had said, well, more babies are being killed than ever. You know, like millions of babies have been killed, and compared to war, let's look at war. You have like almost more babies being killed than in like maybe adding up all the wars. I mean, this is how serious it is. And so this person said, well, like, you know, let's play devil's advocate for a minute, and at least you don't have, you know, something like the population will be decreased. So I'm like, oh yeah, Bill Gates, right? I don't know if he heard me say that. But do we ever say that? Do we ever use that argument in war? I was thinking about that last night, and I'm like, when people have gone to war and we have lost our men and our soldiers, have we ever said, well, at least we have less population now? Never. Never, ever. Never. People grieve. People cry. People don't like war. We don't, especially when it comes to useless wars. When we have wars where, you know, it's about greed or, you know, just defending politicians because they fight, we don't want to lose our sons and daughters, right? So I was just thinking of that argument, you know, what if we said that? What if we had a war and we were like, oh well, at least, you know, a lot of people died and we have less people to worry about now. That's pretty indifferent, right? That's a heart that's pretty indifferent toward other people. But unfortunately, you know, this person, I like him, nice guy. But unfortunately, that is how most people think about abortion. They think, oh well, we have, you know, we have less population, we have you know, there's a problem. You know, we see people in other countries who are starving, right? And so that can come from a place of compassion sometimes, like, okay, at least we have less population. Because we see people in other countries starving, we see people suffering, we see people um, in life suffering, and that's another part of this. But you know what? Suffering is part of life, no matter whether you have a big population of people or a small population. Like, so where I came from, a family of, um, my grandmother had 10 kids in dirt poverty. Let's talk about that for a minute because a lot of people will use that argument. I always think, which one of my aunts or uncles should not have lived? Which one? You know, especially when I had a favorite uncle and a favorite aunt, and I think about like, okay, so should they have died because they had suffering in life? Of course not. Of course not, you know? Suffering can either make you bitter or it can make you better. And that's something I've been thinking about lately. Better or bitter. So, like, It's a Wonderful Life, I always think of that too, that movie where my uncle made a huge difference in my life, huge. And my aunt did. And, my life would have been so empty without those people in my life. Um, should it have been, no, I'm thinking, should it have been my Uncle Gary? No, I learned some things from his life. Should it have been Mark? Mark, actually, I wasn't as close to him, but I heard he read a lot of books growing up, and he worked for like IBM or something. So, I mean, when you think people who come from poverty cannot succeed, it's not the problem of the suffering, it's your mindset that you think that people cannot overcome suffering. I mean, for him to be able to be that smart, like an Elon Musk, is just amazing how smart he was. Um, should it have been, should it have been, I'm trying to think who else, you know, um, no, I'm not going to say that. But anyways, the, every experience that I've had with my aunts and uncles in my life, was a learning lesson for me. It helped shape me. It helped define me. Um, so, I mean, who are we, honestly, to think we have the right to say who should live and who should not? And then to think that, just because you're a mother, you have a right to kill your child. We can love moms, but we need to correct them. Just like, when I'm at work, there's correction. There's correction all the time. When you're in life, there's correction all the time. So just, it seems like in this one area though, with moms, young women, we are like, oh, we're not going to tell you what to do. And I don't know why we think as an older generation, we don't have the responsibility and obligation to actually tell people what is right and what is wrong. I don't think in any other area of life, I'm trying to think, where people are killed, do we say hands off, we're not gonna touch this. So I think sometimes people just don't have the language, they don't have the ability to um, deal with the apologetics of abortion, to deal with it. And unless you've been through it, you don't know. So I've been thinking lately with my business, how do I use my life experience with abortion to help women? And that's what I said last night. Someone said something about abortion, and I said, well, I'll tell you, I've had one, so I know. I'm somebody who knows, and I can tell you the trauma that comes for women after this. Even up until like today, up until now. I mean, I can feel myself getting anxious sometimes at work, feeling like I'm going to make a mistake, and feeling that anxiety and just having that. I live with that. So, so it's really important that we educate people. It's just not acceptable to be like, well, it's not my business, so not my problem. Not in this particular area. There are definitely, I understand where this person's coming from. There is definitely, for the most part in life, I mind my business and I'm like, not my problem. So, but when it comes to life, it's not, you cannot take an argument like that and slap it on to, life. This is a whole different arena we're talking about. Just because you cannot, because it's hidden, it's done in the dark, so to say, and it needs to be brought to light. And because you are not there seeing it, doesn't mean it's acceptable. If we have technology that goes into the doctor's room, doctor's office, or, let's say Planned Parenthood, and we actually, have shown what an abortion is and babies torn apart. But if we could show the whole picture where moms are laying there, the babies are being aborted, what her body goes through. I was talking to somebody else about this too. The whole system of a woman, her whole system is like in shock from it, right? Her whole body is thrown off. If we could show that, and we could follow a woman and show the symptoms of abortion, and then follow her all the way through the healing process, I think more people would be like, no, no abortion. It's wrong. We just saw a child killed, and now we see how this affects mothers long term, and how it affects society. So to think it doesn't affect you is also a denial that it affects everybody. It affects society greatly. So when you have moms who are dealing with this and having an extra weight, and they have, number one, they can't have kids, and they grieve that their whole life because the doctor butchered them, or they have kids, as I have, and I've been blessed with 5. You can see how, basically, women have that extra load to carry because they have to now deal with, that death that they never got to grieve, and it's unnatural. This is why when someone dies that we love, we usually have to grieve it. And we have programs out there. There's just another guy I met talking about going through the grieving process with people. We have organizations that will help people grieve, but when you have a child killed by abortion, nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody's there for you. A woman usually is left on her own. Nobody cares. Nobody comes alongside her and helps her grieve. So abortion is not just stuff, do what you want, no. Abortion is huge, huge. It's a family member that has died. It's would you do that to anybody else? If you had a son or daughter who was just murdered, would you be like, oh, it doesn't bother me? No, of course not. We care quite a bit about, an unrighteous anger. I was talking to people about the McDonald's lawsuit when a woman said that her coffee, or somebody said their coffee burned them and it's McDonald's fault. Well, there's a lack of personal responsibility there, right? You're getting coffee, it's hot, wake up, it's on you. You spilled it. We get a righteous anger about little things like that, right? But we are not angry when we see someone next door murdered. So when someone's murdered, like, if I saw someone, so people are getting shot in New York every single day, okay? Does that bother us? Yes. So when someone is being aborted, why does that not bother us? It's not that abortion is okay, it's that we are cold-hearted, that we have become so indifferent to abortion that we have learned to live in the dark about this. Our society has conditioned us to be like, oh, that's not really a person. That is a person in that doctor's office that is being killed. That's what you're doing when you go to that doctor's office. You are actually going to a murderer, and you are actually having a person killed. And if that person had a voice and they were sitting there with you, they'd be like, why are you killing me? Why do I have to be killed? Because you want me killed? Why do I have to be killed? Because I might cost too much? Because I might what? I might be an inconvenience to you? Can you imagine being next to a grown person and saying, you killed me because I just didn't fit your mold in life? You know what I mean? I wasn't good enough. I wasn't at the right time. You know what I mean? We would never say such a thing to a person to their face. We would never be like, you're being killed because you were born at the wrong time. We would never, or you were conceived at the wrong time. Or, your dad just wasn't the right boyfriend, so you have to be killed. We would never do that, but yet we are so cold-hearted to continue the narrative of abortion without thinking twice that is a person. So we need to speak up in these conversations. We need to be appropriate about it. Obviously, we don't, just come out and, yell it in the road, right? So to say, but we do have to speak for the unborn because they do not have a voice, and it is not fair, and it's the most, I mean, people say, oh, people die all the time. The biggest cause of death is car accidents, right? No, it's abortion. It's abortion, and we're not talking about it. Okay, thanks for joining me, guys.